Greetings to all of you, my dear sisters and brothers and my dear friends, and all of you are welcome to this new broadcasting of Be Committed, a study of Ruth, what we already had, and now the book of Esther, doing God's will, whatever the cost. So we are now starting in Esther chapter 2, the new queen. This is your pastor, Yeti. The new queen, in which Esther becomes the king's wife and Mordecai gets no reward for saving the king's life. There's A.B. Simpson, founder of the Christian and Missionary Alliance, said God is preparing his heroes, and when the opportunity comes, he can fit them into their places in a moment, and the world will wonder where they came from. Well, Dr. Simpson might have added that God also prepares his heroines, for certainly Esther was divinely prepared for her role as the new queen. God is never surprised by circumstances or at a loss for prepared servants. He had Joseph ready in Egypt, Ezekiel and Daniel in Babylon, and Nehemiah in Susa, and he has Esther ready for his ministry to the Jews in the Persian Empire. So as you read for yourself this chapter, you will see that at least 3 evidences of the hand of God had worked in the affairs of the people. We're going to see the agreement of the king in chapter 2, verse 1 to 4, and I'm going to read it to you. Later, when King Xerxes' fury had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what he had agreed about her. Then the king's personal attendants proposed, "Let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful young women into the harem of the citadel of Susa. Let them be placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. Nearly 4 years have passed since Vashti was deposed. During that time, Xerxes directed his ill-fated Greek campaign and came home in humiliation instead of honor. Has he considered his rash actions toward his wife? His affection for Vashti rekindled, and though he had a harem full of concubines, he missed his queen. There is a difference between love and sex. The passing excitement of the moment is not the same as the lasting enrichment of a lifetime relationship. The king's advisers were concerned that Vashti not be restored to royal favor, for if she regained her throne, their own lives would be in danger. After all, it was they who had told the king to remove her. But more was involved than the lives of the king's counselors. For the survival of the Jewish nation was also at stake. Queen Vashti would certainly not intercede on behalf of the Jews. She probably would have cooperated with Haman. Knowing the king's strong sensual appetite, the council suggested that he assembled a new harem composed of the most beautiful young virgins in the empire. This was not a beauty contest, where the winners were rewarded by having a chance for the throne. These young women were conscribed against their will and made a part of the royal harem. Every night the king had a new partner, and the next morning she joined the rest of the concubines. The one who pleased the king the most would become his new queen. It sounds like something out of the Arabian Nights, except that in those tales, Emperor Shahryar married a new wife each day and had her slain the next morning. That way he could be sure she wouldn't be unfaithful to him. My goodness. I wonder how many beautiful girls hid when the king's offers showed up to abduct them. Heartbroken mothers and fathers, no doubt, lied to the officers and denied that they had any virgin daughters. Perhaps some of the girls married any available man rather than spent a hopeless life shut up in the king's harem. Once they had been with the king, they belonged to him and could not marry. If the king ignored them, they were destined for a life of loneliness, shut up in a royal harem. Honor? Perhaps. Happiness? No. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. Like the rivers of water, he turns it whatever he wishes. This doesn't mean that God forced Xerxes to accept the plan or that God approved of the king's harems or of his sensual abuse of women. It simply means that without being the author of their sin, God so directed the people in the situation that decisions were made that accomplished his purpose. The decisions made today in the high places of the government and finances seem removed from the everyday lives of God's people, but they affect us and God's work in many ways. It's good to know that God is on his throne and that no decision is made that can thwart his purpose. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" There is no attribute of God more comforting to his children than the doctrine of divine sovereignty. While we confess that many things involved in this doctrine are shrouded in mystery, it's unthinkable that Almighty God should not be master of his own universe. Even in the affairs of a pagan empire, God is in control. So let's see now what the choice is of Esther. And we will read that in chapter 2, the verses 5 to 18. Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin, named Mordecai, son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Among those taken captive with Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Hegai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Hegai, who had charge of the harem. She pleased him and won his favor. Immediately, he provided her with her beauty treatments and special food. He assigned to her 7 female attendants selected from the king's palace and moved her and her attendants into the best place into the harem. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day, he walked back and forth near to the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. Before a young woman's turn came to go into the king Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil and myrrh, and 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. And this is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would go there, and the morning return to another part of the harem to the care of Shazgaz, the king's eunuchs, who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. When the turn came for Esther, the young woman Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch was in charge of the harem, suggested, and Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. We are now introduced to Mordecai and his cousin, Esther, who along with Aman are the principal players in this drama. Once again, we see the hand of God at work in the life of this lovely Jewish. Consider the factors involved. The influence of Mordecai. Mordecai is named 58 times in this book, and 7 times he is identified as a Jew. His ancestor Kish was among the Jews taken to Babylon from Jerusalem in the second deportation. Cyrus, king of Persia, entered Babylon in 539, and the next year gave the Jews permission to return to their land. About 50,000 responded. In subsequent years, other Jews returned to Israel, but Mordecai chose to remain in the Persian capital. While the Babylonians made life difficult for the Jews, the Persians were more lenient to aliens, and many Jews prospered in the land of their captors. Mordecai even eventually held an official position in the government and sat at the king's gate. It's likely that he was given this position after Esther's coronation, because he had to walk back and forth in front of the house of the woman in order to find out how his adopted daughter was doing. If he were an officer of the king, he would have had access to inside information. Esther was Mordecai's cousin and adopted daughter. Her Persian name Esther means star, and her Hebrew name Hadassah means myrtle. It's interesting that myrtle tree bears a flower that looks like a star. A beautiful woman, she was one of those taken into the king's harem. One of the key elements in this story is the fact that the people in Shushan didn't know that Mordecai and Esther were Jews. The palace personnel found out about Mordecai when he told him, and the king learned about Esther at the second banquet she hosted for him and Haman. But even more serious than their lifestyle is the problem of a Jewish in a harem and ultimately marrying a Gentile. The law of Moses prohibited all kinds of illicit sex and as mixed marriages, and both Ezra and Nehemiah had to deal with the problems of Jews marrying Gentiles. Yet God allowed a pure Jewish girl to become the wife of a lustful Gentile pagan king, a worshipper of Zoroaster. When you consider the backslide state of the Jewish nation at that time, the disobedience of the Jewish remnant in the Persian Empire, and the unspiritual lifestyle of Mordecai and Esther, is it any wonder that the name of God is absent from the book? Would you want to identify your holy name with such an unholy people? We end with this, the encouragement of Haggai. Just as Joseph found favor in Egypt and Daniel in Babylon, so Esther found favor in Susha. God is so great that he can work even in the heart and mind of the keeper of a harem. Haggai was a Gentile. His job was to provide pleasure for the king, and he didn't know the true God of Israel. Nevertheless, he played an important role in the plan that God was working out for the people. Even today, God is working in places where you and I might think he is absent. Haggai had a year-long beauty treatment to prepare each woman for the king. It includes a prescribed diet, the application of special perfumes and cosmetics, and probably a course on court etiquette. They were being trained to do one thing: satisfy the desire of the king. The one who pleased him the most would become his wife. Because of the providence of God, Haggai gave Esther special treatment and the best place in the house for her and her maids. The next part will be of the nationality of Esther, but that is for another time. So I hope you enjoyed this historical and life of both Mordecai and Esther, and how God is working. And we really acknowledge that, because it is true that God is working in places where you and I might think he is absent. I think we all agree on that. So may God bless your heart, my dear ones. And I hope you enjoy the study. Blessings to all of you, my dear ones. This is your Pastor Yeti. I love you guys. Bye.